My name is Atsila Yona, and today I'm going to be talking about my genealogy tree story. Um, some of you may know me, okay? I'm an original American, aka Origine, and I found out about my lineage through my elders. My elders will always tell me that they were Indian, they came from America, and they didn't really say anything about a slave ship. And at that time, I was going through a I'm black and I'm proud phase. And initially, I rejected it. I was like, what? No, that's not what my history teachers taught me. But over time, as I learned, you know, original American history, and the more I even learned about myself, I was like, okay, yeah, my elders had a point, and yeah, my elders were being truthful and it was being correct with the information that they gave me. So once I figured out and realized that my elders were telling me the truth, I decided to dive more into my genealogy tree research. Now, I know a lot of people have trouble finding more information about their lineage. And yes, it is a hard process. And you may spend many nights, sleepless nights, up researching and finding documents of your ancestors like me. It's not an easy process. The people who did the census on our ancestors, they did a lot of shady stuff. And I'm not saying things from a personal feeling. I'm saying things from a historical and factual standpoint. So when I researched my ancestors' tree, initially I was going in for I need to see Indian on these birth certificates, right? I have to see Indian, them being labeled Indian in order for me to really say that I'm indigenous. The only problem with that mindset in theory is that a lot of origines, were reclassified and still is being reclassified. And not too many know that Walter Plecker was changing people documents from Indian to black to Negro to et cetera, et cetera. And he's not the only one that did it. There's other states that purposely labeled us black, purposely labeled us Negro, and even in some cases they would label us African and then be like, okay, well, we take the African off if you fight a war for us. So so yes, like when you research your lineage tree and you don't see the labels that you want, please remember that our ancestors, were being heavily reclassified. And not only that, some of them had to take the label in because they did not want to be moved from their own land. They did not want to, move west. So they changed a lot of their names and documents and so on and so forth, to black, Negro, whatever. Okay. In my family case, I did see a lot of black and Negro and especially colored. And for those that don't know, colored is usually code word for Indian. They labeled a lot of indigenous people colored. And I don't know about y'all guys. I don't know if y'all know this, but on the first census, there was no checkbox to be, labeled as Indian. You was either white or colored. So basically, if you wasn't white, you was labeled colored. You fall into the colored category. So that's what happened to a lot of my ancestors. And as I researched my genealogy tree, I saw a lot of them being business owners and farmers. They just had their own life and they was living quite freely. So I can proudly say that 90% of my ancestors, from what, 16, 19, to now, a lot of them, I want to say at least 90% of them were free. Okay? I have yet to find any slave schedules of my family, and I trace my lineage back here in America to the 1700s. And yes, I do have a little bit of French ancestry. My fourth great grandfather was French, and I was able to trace that side to, like, oh God, like, I want to say maybe 1500s, maybe 14. I trace their lineage pretty far back. So even with that, learning more about my genealogy, it makes me more confident and it makes me feel more unique. Because when you research your lineage, you know what you are talking about. You know what you are speaking about because you've seen the documents yourself. Okay? You know the people in your family tree, and you know what happened. You know where they was at. You know what they had in their possession, and so on and so forth. So, just like I said, a lot of my ancestors were landowners, farmers, business owners. I even had one ancestor that was a physician. He was a physician in like the 1800s. So, when it comes to ancestry, you should be proud of who you are. And even if you do have different nationalities in your genealogy tree, you should not shun those out. Because at the end of the day, they're still your ancestors. Okay? And I know a lot of origines out there are looking for those documents labeled Indian. And I want to tell you right now, you may find them and you may not. But it's not the end of the world. Because when it comes to history, it's very complex. Also, when you have people reclassifying your elders, your ancestors, and forcing labels onto them and removing them from their lands and so on and so forth. So if you don't find a document that says Indian yet, don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged and don't feel like you don't belong here. Okay? Because just like I said in the first census, we didn't have a checkbox that let us, register ourselves as Indian. Okay, you was either in two categories. Also, certain tribes, some tribes were automatically labeled as black. Or they divided the tribe and be like, oh, well, you're lighter, so we're going to label you white. And, oh, you're darker, so we're going to label you black or Negro. So it's a lot of colorism and a lot of classification going on. So just because you may find a document saying that your ancestor was white, it does not really necessarily mean that they were white. Despite the facts that we've been given about original American history. And just because you may see documents are saying, oh, you're black, Negro, African, or whatever, same thing. Our elders were faced with a lot of discrimination, and so was our ancestors. So, with that being said, you have to keep an open mind and an open heart in to receiving this information. And also, I do want to warn y'all when it comes to genealogy and researching your lineage, there are some sites that will change the gender of your ancestors. So what I mean by that is, one of my ancestors, he's from Mexico, and he's a male, of course. But they labeled him as female on the document. And for the longest, I was just sitting there, I'm like, I don't think they allowed same-sex marriages back then, because like their wife was on there, the children was on there, but they had him labeled as a woman, like a female. So I was like, I'm confused. And later on, I found out that, they go back and change the gender, they go back and change the race. Some people have even told me that they look at documents of their ancestors and they see where, like, they may have scratched out the initial race and put like B on it for B as in black. So it's a lot of shady stuff when it comes to genealogy and ancestry. So that's why you got to keep an open mind and an open heart and go in level-headed, knowing that knowing what you know now. The genealogy is only there to teach you about your past and your history and your family's history and so on and so forth. It's not there to convince you of who you are or just say, hey, yeah, this is just what it says, so therefore that's just what you are. No, because a lot of us have been reclassified. A lot of us face discrimination. A lot of us face colorism. So yes, in the beginning, I felt like I wanted to give up. I was like, oh my God, like, I cannot do this. Like, I was not finding anything. And I think in the beginning I did go far as back to the 1800s, but even with that, I was just like, come on now. Like, why I can't find more information of my ancestors? So it did kind of discourage me. But as I just continued on and continued researching my lineage, I eventually got past the 1800s and got into the 1700s. So even with that, I'm happy. If I don't get father, it's okay. I just learned to accept the documents for what it is. And documents are not written in stone. Okay, so that's why they're able to change information like that as well. But at the same time, it's always best to believe your elders at the end of the day, because these documents, they're just going to show you where people were, what they was doing, and so on and so forth, and these documents may or may not go hand in hand with your elders' oral history. But think of it like this. Because when I was starting out and I wasn't like too much into original American heritage, I was very judgmental. And I remember my grandmother telling me, oh yeah, I'm Ishuk. I'm from the Ishuk tribe. And my uncle was enrolled in the tribe. And I was like, there is no original American tribe that starts with a, E. And let me remind you, I was like very ignorant at this time. And I thought I knew everything. So I asked Grandma, I said, Grandma, how do you spell it? She said, I-S. I said, wait a minute. That's not how. There's no tribe that starts with an I, but it really is a tribe that starts with an I. Ishuk, you say E, but it really has an I. Okay? So it's very important to learn what your elders are talking about, because they have a lot of knowledge. And some of the knowledge that they have not even written in history books, or even the people on the reservation, they don't even know about it either. So please talk to your elders and get information out of them and see what they know, because it's important for us to stick together with our family, especially our elders at this time. Like, this is a very critical moment in history for us to stick together. So yes, when my grandma told me that, and I actually did decide to look it up, I was like, oh my goodness, my grandma was telling the truth. She was being honest with me. So as I did more research, I was like, okay, yeah, things really do check out with my grandmother. And then I started just gathering more and more information, and especially with my other grandmother as well. Her lineage is Inuyawaya. And I remember her telling me that her mom was a full-blood, Cherokee. And I know, like, it's cliche because everybody's like, oh yeah, we all come from Cherokee, But when I researched the lineage from my genealogy, her story really does check out. You know, I remember Ancestry was telling me that my second great grandfather, he may have witnessed the Trail of Tears, when really that man came to Texas during the time frame of the Trail of Tears. So it is a possibility that he came by the way of the Trail of Tears. So with that being said, a lot of the things that my elders were telling me were checking out. And just because on these documents they're not labeled as Indian does not mean that they are lying. Okay? Because we already know the opposition that our people face when it comes to us expressing our heritage. Okay? And if you did not live on a reservation, of course you're not going to be labeled as Indian. You know, you're going to be reclassified as something else. You know, that's just, it is what it is. So yeah, you guys, I really just wanted to talk about this. And so yeah, I hope this really does open some of y'all guys' minds and give y'all guys the hope and the inspiration to continue to research your genealogy, because with genealogy is so much gold in it. Like, and what I mean by gold is valuable. Doing your genealogy tree research is valuable. And not only does it tell you who your ancestors are, quote quote, but it tells you where they went, where they go to, who they met. It's amazing, you know. And I know when it comes to melanated people history, you know, brown skinned people history, they love to correlate us with slavery. They love to correlate us with dysfunction, trauma, and being a servant, all this other stuff, you know. And yes, you know, there was Indian slavery, or should I say original American slavery. You know, yes, you know, original Americans were servants as well. But I want people to remember that we are much more than these labels that people place onto us. We are much more than this thing that they say we are, or we come from, you know, slavery. Like, oh, you know, all black people come from the slave trade. But yet, when you do your genealogy research, you're going to really find out that that's a lie, you know. I have yet to meet a person that had a document from their genealogy that says that their ancestor came here by the way of the slave trade. Okay? It's really rare. It's really rare, and I never, not even in my genealogy, they said that my ancestors came the way of the slave trade, you know. And we all know how they like to document things. We all know how they like to record everything that goes on with us, but somehow they didn't record a transit like the slave trade. Not bringing no theories up or not saying anything, not trying to come off like a conspiracy theorist, but what I will say is my ancestors did not come here by the way of the slave trade. So, you know, transit like the slave trade at that. And I'm just going to keep it at that. So yes, y'all guys, I love you, and I hope y'all guys continue to research your genealogy, and remember to keep an open mind and an open heart, and ask your ancestors to really guide you as well during your genealogy tree research. So yes, until next time, mwah.